The darkness of space had never seen anything like this before. Near the swirling colors of the Proxima Nebula, where ancient stars were born and died, the greatest war fleet in galactic history was gathering. Ships of every shape and size stretched. As far as the eye could see, their hulls gleaming under the distant starlight. Admiral Kethvar pressed his clawed hands against the massive windows of his command ship, watching as vessel after vessel took its place in the formation. His green-scaled skin reflected the soft glow of the bridge lights, and his yellow eyes burned with the hunger of conquest. The Zephyrian hegemony had built this fleet for one purpose: to crush any species that dared to resist their rule. "The ancient stars," whispered Sub-Commander Drakmor from behind him. "I have never seen so many ships in one place." Kethavar's mouth curved into a predatory grin, showing rows of sharp teeth. 10,347 vessels, to be exact. Ships from every world we have conquered. The spider-like arachnoids with their web-shooting fighters, the crystal beings of Xerion Prime with their energy-bending cruisers. Even the mechanical synthoids have contributed their self-repairing dreadnoughts. The bridge around them hummed with activity. Dozens of different alien species worked at various control stations, their forms as diverse as the ships outside. Some had multiple arms that moved in perfect coordination across holographic displays. Others floated in specialized tanks filled with glowing liquid, their tentacles dancing over bio-neural interfaces. The air recycling systems worked overtime to accommodate the different atmospheric needs of each species. "Status report," Kethvar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. Commander Vextal, his second-in-command, glided across the floor on 4 powerful legs. His insect-like head tilted as he read from a glowing datapad. "All fleet elements in position, Admiral. The human colonies lie just 3 jumps ahead through hyperspace. Our spy networks report minimal resistance capabilities. They still use crude kinetic projectile weapons and basic energy shields that our ancestors abandoned centuries ago." The Admiral's claws clicked against the window as he processed this information. Humans, such a young species barely out of their home solar system, yet they had claimed several resource-rich worlds in this sector. Their audacity would be their downfall. "Tell me about their military again," Kethvar said, turning away from the window to face his tactical display. The holographic screen showed the human colonies as small red dots, seemingly defenseless against the approaching storm. Vextal's compound eyes glittered as he accessed the intelligence files. They have been spacefaring for less than 200 of their years. Their largest ships are barely 400 meters long, smaller than our escort fighters. They rely heavily on chemical rockets for propulsion and nuclear fission for power. Most amusing of all, they still use physical projectiles that they fire at high velocity, believing this can penetrate modern energy shielding. Laughter rippled across the bridge from various alien throats, producing sounds ranging from chittering clicks to deep, resonant booms. The idea of fighting with such primitive weapons seemed absurd to beings who had mastered plasma cannons, gravitational disruptors, and matter converters. "Excellent. Another quick conquest like the Altarians before them," Kethvar said, his satisfaction evident. The memory of that campaign still brought him joy, an entire peaceful civilization surrendering after seeing just a fraction of his fleet's power. These humans have been expanding rapidly through this sector, claiming worlds rich in rare minerals and energy sources. It's time they learned their place in the galactic order. The tactical officer, a floating jellyfish-like, being encased in a mobility suit, drifted closer to the display. "Admiral, our xenobiologists report that humans are remarkably similar to the Altarians in their social structure. They form emotional attachments to their colonies and will likely surrender quickly to prevent civilian casualties." "Perfect," Kethvar replied. "We'll offer them the standard terms: complete surrender, relocation of their population to designated worlds, and transfer of all resources to the hegemony. Those who cooperate will be allowed to live as productive members of our empire." Around them, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, preparing for the hyperspace jump that would bring them to human territory. Holographic displays showed fuel levels, weapon charges, and shield capacities across the entire fleet. Everything was ready. The Admiral had led 43 such campaigns in his military career, each one following the same predictable pattern: overwhelming force, swift surrender, integration into the hegemony. The humans, with their primitive technology and naive idealism, would be no different from any other species that had faced the might of the Galactic Empire. "Admiral," the communications specialist announced, her voice echoing from the water-filled chamber where her aquatic species thrived. "All ships report ready for jump. Fleet commanders await your orders." Kethvar straightened his uniform and took one last look at the magnificent Armada spread before him. 10,000 ships carrying the combined military, might of 12 conquered civilizations, all focused on one simple goal: adding humanity to their growing empire. "Initiate jump sequence," he commanded. "Destination, New Geneva system. Let's go collect our newest subjects." The stars suddenly stretched into brilliant lines of light as the massive Armada vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the confidence of 1,000 victories and the absolute certainty of one more easy conquest. None of them suspected that they were about to encounter something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The universe seemed to hold its breath as 10,000 alien warships tore through the fabric of space-time, emerging from hyperspace in a cascade of brilliant flashes. Reality twisted and bent around each vessel as they dropped back into normal space, their massive hulls gleaming under the light of New Geneva's twin suns. Admiral Kethvar stood rigid on his command bridge, expecting to see the familiar sight of a panicked human colony, civilian transports fleeing in all directions, military vessels scrambling to form defensive lines, and frantic communication signals begging for mercy. Instead, his yellow reptilian eyes narrowed as the tactical displays showed something completely unexpected: empty space. "Almost." "Sir," called out sensor operator Zixtal, her forearms dancing across the control interface while her crystalline body pulsed with confused light patterns. "I'm detecting a single contact between our fleet and the planet." The Admiral's scaled head turned sharply toward the sensor station. "One ship? After all our intelligence reports about human expansion and military buildup, they send one ship." He strode across the bridge, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. Around him, dozens of different alien species worked at their stations, some floating in anti-gravity fields, others connected to their computers through bio-neural links, and a few that existed as pure energy contained within special housing. "Units, show me," Kethvar commanded. The main holographic display shimmered to life, showing the New Geneva system in three-dimensional detail. The planet hung like a blue-green jewel in the distance, clearly inhabited based on the orbital structures and energy signatures surrounding it. But between the massive alien armada and their target sat a single dot of light. "Specifications?" the Admiral demanded. Zixtal's crystalline fingers moved rapidly over her controls, trying to get clear readings. "It's strange, Admiral. The vessel appears to be approximately 800 meters in length, definitely human design based on the hull configuration. But, sir, it's just sitting there. No evasive maneuvers, no attempt to retreat to the planet. Minimal energy signatures, barely enough to maintain life support." Through the massive viewing windows that stretched across the front of the bridge, Kethvar could see the distant speck with his own eyes. It looked impossibly small against the starfield, a tiny mote of metal facing down the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Commander Vextal scuttled up beside him on his 4 powerful legs, his insect-like, head tilting in confusion. "Perhaps their communications array is damaged, Admiral. Or maybe the crew is paralyzed with terror at the sight of our fleet." The bridge fell quiet except for the constant hum of electronics and life support systems. Every alien present had seen this scenario before. Smaller civilizations faced with overwhelming force, their military vessels either fleeing immediately or broadcasting surrender terms within minutes. But this human ship did neither. "Distance to target?" Kethvar asked. "Approximately 50,000 kilometers, sir," replied the navigation officer, a floating squid-like creature whose tentacles interfaced directly with the ship's computer systems. "At that range, they can see us clearly," the Admiral mused. "They know exactly what they're facing, so why aren't they moving?" Sub-Commander Drakmore approached from the tactical station. "Sir, should we attempt to communicate with them?" Standard surrender terms. Kethvar considered this for a moment, then shook his head. No. Let's give them a proper demonstration first. Deploy the fleet into intimidation formation. I want every ship visible to their sensors, full weapon charging cycles. Let them see what happens to those who oppose the hegemony. The order spread through the communications network like wildfire. Across 10,000 ships, crews sprang into action. The massive alien armada began to spread out like a vast net of death, each vessel taking its predetermined position in a formation designed to strike fear into the hearts of any enemy. Sleek Zephyrian cruisers moved with predatory grace, their hulls bristling with plasma cannon turrets that began to glow with building energy. The spider-like arachnoid ships extended their mechanical legs, revealing weapon ports that had been hidden within their bodies. Crystal ships from Zerion Prime started to pulse with inner light as they charged their matter disruption beams. The mechanical synthoids activated their self-repair systems, knowing that their role would be to absorb enemy fire, while the more fragile organic ships delivered the killing blows. Massive dreadnoughts that looked like floating cities moved into position, their launch bays opening to reveal swarms of smaller fighter craft. Energy buildup detected across the fleet, reported the weapons officer. All ships report weapons. Charging normally. Estimated time to full combat readiness, 3 minutes. The light show was spectacular. Thousands of alien weapons systems came online simultaneously, creating a display of raw power that could be seen from the planet's surface. Energy discharges danced between ships as they tested their targeting systems. The space around the Armada glowed with barely contained destruction, but through it all the human ship remained motionless. "Sir," Zixtal called out, her voice tinged with bewilderment. "The human vessel shows no reaction to our display. No change in energy output, no movement, no communications attempts." Kethvar stared at the tactical display in growing confusion. Every species they had ever encountered responded to this show of force. Some fled immediately, others tried to negotiate. A few brave ones even attempted desperate attacks. But none had ever simply waited. "Are we certain their ship is functional?" he asked. "Life signs are present aboard the vessel, Admiral. Their reactor is online, though running at minimal power. All systems appear operational." The silence stretched on. 10,000 alien warships faced a single human vessel across the cold vacuum of space, weapons charged and ready to deliver annihilation. Yet somehow the tiny ship's complete lack of response was more unsettling than any aggressive action could have been. It simply floated there, patient and still, as if it was waiting for something that only it knew was coming. The tension on the alien command bridge was thick enough to cut with a blade. For several long minutes, the human ship had sat motionless in space, ignoring the greatest display of military might the galaxy had ever seen. Then, without any warning, everything changed. "Admiral, the human vessel is powering up." "Sensor operator," Zixtal called out, her crystalline body flickering with nervous energy patterns. Her forearms moved frantically across the control panels as readings began flooding her screens. Admiral Kethvar leaned forward in his massive command chair, his scaled lips curving into a satisfied grin. "Finally, prepare to receive their surrender. Transmission. Have the communications array ready to broadcast their submission to the entire fleet." But the numbers climbing on Zixtal's displays didn't match anything she had seen before. Her voice cracked with confusion as she read them aloud. "Sir, their power output is increasing rapidly. 5,000 units, 10,000, 15,000. Commander Vexistal scuttled closer to the sensor station, his compound eyes reflecting the glow of the readouts. "That's higher than our escort frigates generate at full power. Are you certain these readings are accurate?" 25,000 units and climbing," Zixtal replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is impossible. No single ship can generate this much energy." The bridge crew began to murmur among themselves in dozens of different alien languages. The floating jellyfish creatures pulsed with agitated colors. The mechanical synthoids' optical sensors focused intently on the displays. Even the energy beings contained in their special chambers seemed to flicker with uncertainty. 50,000 units, Zixtal announced, her crystalline form now blazing with alarm signals. "Sir, that's more power than some of our heavy cruisers." Kethvar stood up abruptly, his claws scraping against the armrests of his chair. "Check your instruments, run a full diagnostic. Those readings must be wrong." But before the sensor operator could comply, something happened that made every alien on the bridge freeze in terror. The space around the human vessel began to shimmer and distort, like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone. What had appeared to be empty void started to reveal shapes, massive angular forms that materialized out of nothingness as if reality itself was being rewritten. "By the ancient stars," Subcommander Drakmor gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Weapon." Platforms the size of small moons suddenly became visible, their hulls bristling with gun batteries that could flatten entire cities. Defensive arrays unfolded like mechanical flowers, each petal revealing missile launchers and energy projectors. The darkness of space lit up as dozens, then hundreds of previously invisible objects activated their running lights. "Sir, the communications?" Officer stammered, her aquatic form thrashing in her water-filled chamber. "We're receiving multiple new contacts, dozens. No, hundreds of them. They were there all along, we just couldn't see them." The tactical hologram in the center of the bridge transformed from showing a single human ship to displaying a three-dimensional nightmare of red enemy contacts. They appeared everywhere, above, below, to both sides of the alien fleet. Some were massive structures that dwarfed even the largest Zephyrian dreadnoughts. Others were swarms of smaller craft that moved with perfect coordination. "Stealth technology," the Admiral breathed, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. "But how? Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. We can detect ships through 17 different spectrums of radiation." Zixtal's fingers flew over her controls, trying to make sense of the impossible readings. "Admiral, I'm detecting energy signatures I've never seen before. These aren't just ships. Some of these contacts appear to be entire space stations. And, sir, the power readings, they're off the charts." The human vessel that had seemed so small and helpless now revealed itself as merely the visible tip of a massive iceberg. Hidden weapon platforms emerged from what the aliens had thought were asteroids. Camouflaged defense stations powered up inside what looked like space debris. Even some of the distant moons suddenly showed signs of artificial structures and weapon. "Emplacements. How many ships?" Kethvar demanded, his voice tight with growing panic. "Unknown, sir. Our computers can't process the data fast enough. But conservative estimates suggest at least 3,000 contacts and growing." The Admiral's world tilted on its axis. In the span of a few minutes, his overwhelming advantage had evaporated. The humans hadn't sent one desperate ship to face his Armada. They had turned the entire star system into a fortress, and his fleet had sailed right into the middle of it. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his mechanical voice unusually strained, "I'm detecting massive power buildups across all human contacts. Whatever technology they're using, it's far beyond anything in our databases." Commander Vextal approached the Admiral, his insect-like features pale with fear. "Sir, how is this possible? Our intelligence reports indicated the humans were primitive. Chemical rockets, kinetic weapons, basic nuclear power." Kethvar stared at the tactical display as more and more red contacts appeared. Each new ship that decloaked was larger and more heavily armed than anything his species had ever built. The humans hadn't just been hiding their ships, they had been hiding an entire civilization's worth of military technology. "Admiral," Zixtal called out, her voice shaking, "I'm now reading over 5,000 distinct contacts, and sir, many of them are generating power signatures that exceed our entire battle groups combined." The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly frantic beeping of alarms and warning systems. Every alien present was beginning to understand the terrible truth. They hadn't stumbled upon a weak human colony defended by primitive ships. They had awakened something that had been patiently waiting in the darkness, something that possessed technology so advanced it made their own weapons look like stone tools. The hunters had become the hunted, and they didn't even know how it had happened. The command bridge of the massive Zephyrian flagship had never been this quiet. 10,000. Alien warships floated in space around them, but inside the ZHS Dominion, you could hear a pin drop. Every creature on the bridge, from the floating jellyfish beings to the crystalline sensor operators, stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. Red contacts continued to multiply across the holographic map like a spreading infection. What had started as one lonely human ship was now revealing itself as something far more terrifying. Hidden weapons platforms, cloaked battle stations, and stealth vessels materialized throughout the entire star system. The humans had turned New Geneva into a death trap, and the alien Armada had walked right into it. Admiral Kethvar's scaled hands gripped the armrests of his command chair so tightly that his claws left scratches in the metal. His yellow reptilian eyes darted between the various displays, trying to process what he was seeing. In 43 military campaigns he had never encountered anything like this. Then the silence was broken by a sound that made every alien's spine tingle with dread, the clear, confident voice of a human speaking perfect Zephyrian. "Attention, Zephyrian fleet," the voice said, flowing through every communication channel simultaneously. The words were spoken with the kind of calm that comes from absolute confidence. "This is Captain Hyun Soo of the United Earth ship Defiant. We have been monitoring your approach for the past 7 days." The Admiral felt his blood turn to ice water in his veins. 7 days. The humans had been watching them for 7 days, tracking their movement through hyperspace, studying their formations, learning everything about their fleet while remaining completely invisible. Commander Vextal's compound eyes bulged with terror. 7 days, Admiral. They knew we were coming before we even entered their territory, but the human captain wasn't finished. His voice continued with the mechanical precision of someone reading from a detailed report. "Your fleet consists of 10,147 vessels across 12 different species configurations. Total crew complement, approximately 2.3 million beings. We have identified your flagship as the ZHS Dominion, Admiral Kethvar commanding." Gasps and chittering sounds of alarm echoed across the bridge from dozens of different alien throats. Some of the crew members looked around frantically, as if expecting human spies to materialize from the shadows. Others checked their personal weapons, though what good small arms would do against an enemy that could hide entire fleets was anyone's guess. "Impossible," whispered Sub-Commander Drakmore. "How do they know the Admiral's name? That information is classified at the highest levels of the hegemony." The human voice continued relentlessly, and with each word the alien's confidence crumbled further. "Fleet composition analysis: 3,200 Zephyrian heavy cruisers, 2,800 Voltarian destroyers, 1,900 Mantis interceptors, 1,100 arachnoid web fighters, 950 Xerion crystal ships, 647 synthoid dreadnoughts." Captain Hyun Soo rattled off exact numbers, ship classifications, and tactical capabilities with devastating accuracy. He knew not just how many ships they had, but what weapons each one carried, how much armor they possessed, and what their tactical roles were in battle formation. Sensor operator Zixtal's crystalline body flickered with patterns of pure panic. "Admiral, he's reading our complete fleet roster. Information that should be impossible to obtain without accessing our central military computers." Continuing analysis, the human captain's voice remained maddeningly calm. "Estimated ammunition. Reserves 78% of standard combat load. Fuel efficiency suggests your fleet has been traveling for approximately 9 days. Current shield generator efficiency, across all vessels, 94% optimal performance." Kethvar stared at the main view screen where the UES Defiant floated serenely, in space. The human ship no longer looked small and helpless. Instead, it resembled a sleeping predator that had just opened one eye to examine its prey. The realization hit him with the force of a meteor impact. They weren't the hunters in this scenario. They had never been the hunters. They were the prey. "Sir," Commander Vextal approached slowly, his 4 legs trembling slightly. "How do they possess such detailed intelligence? Our fleet movements were classified at the highest levels. Only the Hegemony High Command had access to our complete mission parameters." But Admiral Kethvar couldn't answer. His mind was reeling from the implications. If the humans knew this much about their fleet, what else did they know? Did they have spies throughout the hegemony? Had they been studying alien technology and tactics for years while pretending to be primitive? The tactical officer, a mechanical synthoid whose optical sensors never stopped scanning, turned toward the Admiral. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy buildups across all human contacts. Whatever they're planning, they have enough firepower to slag our entire fleet." "Admiral," the communications officer called out from her water-filled chamber, "should we attempt to jam their transmissions, cut off their ability to coordinate?" Kethvar almost laughed at the suggestion. Jam the communications of beings who had somehow monitored his fleet for a week without being detected, who knew the exact specifications of every ship in his armada, who had hidden an entire military infrastructure throughout a star system so effectively that the most advanced sensors in the galaxy couldn't detect them. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think our jamming technology would be very effective against them." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Their admiral, the conqueror of 43 worlds, the being who had never shown fear in the face of any enemy, sounded defeated. "All ships," Kethvar commanded, his voice barely steady enough to carry authority. "Hold current position. Do not advance toward the planet. Do not power weapons beyond current charge levels. Do not fire unless fired upon." The order rippled through the alien fleet, carried by emergency communications to every ship in the Armada. For the first time in the history of the Zephyrian hegemony, their forces were ordered to assume a defensive posture, not because they were retreating, but because they were genuinely afraid of what the enemy might do if provoked. Admiral Kethvar settled back into his command chair, his scaled face drawn with worry. In all his years of military service, through dozens of conquests and countless battles, he had never experienced the emotion that now gripped his heart like an icy fist. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian hegemony was truly deeply afraid. The silence on the Zephyrian flagship's bridge was shattered by alarms screaming from every console. Sensor operator Zixtal's crystalline body blazed with warning patterns as her 4 arms worked frantically. Across the control panels, "Sir," her voice cracked with strain, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the entire system. The humans, by the ancient stars, they're everywhere." What had begun as scattered sensor anomalies was now revealing itself as the most sophisticated military deception in galactic history. The asteroid field that Admiral Kethvar's fleet had casually dismissed as simple space rocks was lighting up like a constellation of death. Massive weapon platforms emerged from within the largest asteroids, their surfaces splitting open to reveal gun batteries the size of city blocks. "The asteroids," Sub-Commander Drakmor gasped, his scaled face pale with terror. "They're not natural formations. They're camouflaged fortress stations, but that was just the beginning. The gas giant Goliath, which the Zephyrian fleet had written off as a navigational obstacle, suddenly revealed a ring of hidden installations. Enormous space stations materialized from what had appeared to be swirling gas clouds, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Commander Vextal scuttled across the bridge, his compound eyes reflecting the growing number of red contacts on the tactical display. "Admiral, the humans have turned this entire star system into a weapon. Every moon, every asteroid, every patch of seemingly empty space contains hidden military installations. The outer moons of the system, which their long-range scans had identified as lifeless chunks of rock, were now revealing defensive networks that made the aliens' most heavily fortified worlds look like children's toys. Launch tubes opened across their surfaces like blooming metal flowers, revealing missile systems that could have obliterated half the Zephyrian Armada before they even knew they were under attack. "How many weapon platforms?" Kethvar demanded, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Conservative estimate, Admiral. Over 15,000 distinct military installations throughout the system. And sir, that's just what we can detect now that they're powering up." The tactical hologram in the center of the bridge had transformed from showing a simple star system into a 3-dimensional nightmare. Red enemy contacts filled every corner of space, layered in defensive rings that would make any assault impossible. The humans hadn't just built a few hidden bases, they had militarized an entire solar system. Then Captain Hyunsu's voice returned to the communication channels, still carrying that same unnerving calm that had frozen alien blood throughout. "The fleet. Admiral Kethvar, you have 30 minutes to begin withdrawal from this system. This is not a negotiation, this is a courtesy. The Admiral's clawed hands trembled as he gripped his command chair. How? He whispered to himself, his voice barely audible above the bridge's electronic hum. How did they know we were coming? Commander Vextal approached with a new datapad, his insect-like hands shaking as he read the analysis. Sir, I've been studying their tactical broadcasts. The humans didn't just know about our fleet, they knew our exact hyperspace route, our jump timing, even our battle formations. It's as if they've been studying Zephyrian military doctrine for years. The terrible truth began to settle over the bridge crew like a suffocating blanket. The humans hadn't been surprised by their arrival. They had been expecting it, preparing for it, turning it into an elaborate trap. While the Zephyrian hegemony had been planning their next conquest, humanity had been planning their defeat. Admiral, the communications officer called out from her aquatic chamber. I'm receiving multiple requests from fleet commanders. The Voltarian destroyers are asking permission to retreat. The arachnoid web fighters report critical system failures. From a fear-induced crew panic, even the synthoid dreadnoughts are requesting new orders. Across the alien armada, panic was spreading like wildfire. Ships that had never known defeat were suddenly faced with an enemy that possessed technology beyond their understanding. Crews that had conquered dozens of worlds were now confronting the possibility that they might not survive the next hour. Sir, Zixtal reported, her voice hollow with disbelief. I'm now detecting over 20,000 human military installations throughout this system. Some of them are generating power signatures that exceed our entire fleet combined. Kethavar stared at the tactical display, watching as his overwhelming numerical advantage dissolved before his eyes. 10,000 ships meant nothing when the enemy knew every move you were going to make before you made it. The humans had turned his greatest strength, the massive size of his fleet, into his greatest weakness by using it to catalogue every ship, every weapon, every tactical capability. Admiral, Commander Vextal said quietly, what are your orders? For a long moment the Admiral said nothing. He had spent his entire military career believing that superior numbers and firepower guaranteed victory. Now he was learning that intelligence, preparation, and patience could defeat even the mightiest armada. Signal the fleet, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. All ships begin immediate withdrawal. Emergency jump to rally point Zerion. Vextal's compound eyes widened in shock. Sir, we're retreating? Kethavar looked up at his second-in-command, and for the first time in their long military partnership, Vextal saw genuine fear in his admiral's yellow eyes. No, Commander, we're not retreating, we're running. Throughout the alien fleet, hyperspace engines began spinning up as 10,000 ships prepared for emergency departure. It was the first time in galactic history that the Zephyrian hegemony had fled from battle without firing a single shot. As the massive armada began to disappear into hyperspace, Captain Hyun Soo's final transmission followed them across the dimensional barrier. Safe travels, Admiral. We'll be watching. The message echoed through every alien ship as they fled human space, carrying with it a chilling promise. Humanity wasn't just another primitive species waiting to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous, a civilization that had been watching the Watchers, studying the Hunters, and preparing for the day when the galaxy's predators would finally meet their match. The Zephyrian hegemony had awakened something in the darkness of space, something that had been patiently waiting for them to reveal themselves. And now that it was awake, the balance of power in the galaxy would never be the same again. The Ender,